Everyone in the UK will be familiar with these two Just Stop Oil protesters who threw soup over this famous painting by Van Gogh. And yes, I did check that was pronounced correctly, but Al, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that as well. They've now been sentenced, and the sentences might surprise some people because certain celebrities did not get a custodial sentence, although they got a suspended custodial sentence just recently for having very bad images. But these two did go to prison. One went to prison for 20 months, the other one for 2 years and 3 months, which a lot of people might think is excessive for what they might see as throwing soup over a famous painting. And others will be enraged by it and think it's absolutely justified. And I thought no better than to bring on my learned friend Alan Robertshaw from Art of Law, linked in the description below, because that is, after all, an art law channel. And Al's not only got a lot more experience in the criminal side of things in these kind of cases, but specifically art law. So Al, welcome back. What was your reaction when you heard these sentences? Did you expect these sentences? Do you think it's enough? What do you think?
Well, yes, I did expect these sentences, knowing the particular judge. Now, I must confess, why I'm really enjoying being on Secrets is, back on Art of Law, I am very much a no-drama llama. You know, I always try and keep my opinions out of things. But I thought, that's good. I can come on your channel and be really opinionated. Because for lots of reasons, while I am very committed to the environmentalist cause, I am not a fan of Just Stop Oil. And I will explain why as we go on. But yeah, the sentences did not surprise. I don't think they probably surprised anybody, actually. I mean, I know they're being misrepresented. And this is a little bugbear of mine, where it's all, they're being sentenced just for throwing some soup. And it's similar with the other, the riot sentences. Oh, people are being sent to prison just for swearing at a police dog. Well, no, it's like sort of saying, my guy got sent to prison for jumping the queue at the bank and drawing out money that wasn't his, and using balaclavas and sawn off shotguns to do it. This is the thing. I mean, I am very, very passionate about art, as people know. And I could go on about how destroying cultural heritage, as we call it, we don't call it cultural property. And I did my video a little while ago about, de-accession policies and how you protect art. But the destruction of art and cultural heritage is actually a war crime. These are very serious offences. Now, obviously, given a choice, people will say, well, if you had a choice between saving a child and saving a painting, the correct answer is obviously you would save the child. I mean, I'd want to probably see some, Ofcom reports first. It depends on the pit. But, there's a couple of points here. First of all, it's just, what's the connection? Why are people doing this? What benefit do they think it does? What's the connection? Now, I know some people they've tried to make the suffragette or suffragist analogy. And at some stage, maybe we can explain the difference between suffragettes and suffragists. But yeah, there was a particular suffragist. Suffragette. She slashed the Rokeby Venus, a painting, and people are trying to say it's the same as that. But I would say there's a couple of points there. First of all, in that particular case, the argument was this painting represents something that suffragettes and suffragists are fighting against because it was as we would say now, a problematic painting as to the way it depicted women. Also, there was no democratic way that they could do that. It's not like they could vote, because they were actually trying to get votes for women. And I would also point out that the woman who actually vandalised that painting went on to be a major member of the British Union of Fascists. So I'm not really sure she should be being held up as a role model. But yeah, I'm going to get really opinionated here. First of all, I do not see Just Stop Oil are not environmentalists. Okay. We've seen that they will disrupt all sorts of events, Glyndebourne, sporting events, cultural events. The one event they won't disrupt and they happily go to is Glastonbury. Now, these people claim to be following the science. When it comes to climate change, the second biggest driver of climate change, and it's almost overtaking oil, is animal agriculture. And that includes dairy farming. And Worthy Farm is a working dairy farm. And Michael Eavis has always been honest enough to say he started Glastonbury purely for financial reasons, to subsidise the farming. I mean, the reason you've got that Great Pyramid stage is the rest of the year it's a hay barn. So that means you can get the tax relief on it because they just store the hay in there and go, well, it's a farm building. So there are lots of financial benefits there. And people, I've commented on this before, and people said, well, we live in a society. You can't, there are all compromises people have to make. Well, yes, they do, but nobody's forced to go to Glastonbury. It's actually quite hard to get into Glastonbury, unless you know the right people like I do, but I still don't go. The funny thing is, at Glastonbury, one of my friends works there, and they've got the little sort of wind turbine thing. But to keep that going all the time, when there's no wind, they actually put the motor on it just to keep it turning, just for the aesthetics. But yeah, something people are forced to do is go to work and drive to work, and they're quite happy to disrupt that. So first of all, I don't see them as environmentalists because of the hypocrisy of supporting the second biggest driver of climate change and being very happy about it. And also, does this do any good? Now, people often quote a quote study that suggests that this type of protest actually works in the long run because, first of all, it gets the topic out in the media. And while people really resent this type of action, it gets people saying, no, I wouldn't have a problem if they did this, or if they directly addressed went after the people doing this, if they were to sort of like try and stop, oil drilling or something like that. But that study, I did look into this. I was curious about it. And it turned out it wasn't a study. They just asked a dozen academics, what do you think the result will be? And they speculated. And I found two other studies that actually did look in the change of public perception. One said it doesn't seem to make any difference whatsoever. And the other study said it actually alienates people from the cause. I mean, we are professional arguers and professional persuaders. Our job is to persuade people, whether that's a judge or the jury.
And that's a really interesting point. I just want to jump in there, because that's a really interesting point, because I would take notice of arguments and things like this if they were for a given cause and so on. But from my perspective, this would not, what they do, the disruptions they cause, would not persuade me in the slightest towards the cause. Rather, it would just irritate me, frustrate me. And if I was stopped on the way, I don't know, something serious, taking someone to hospital or going to, collect somebody or whatever, people have missed flights, people have missed hospital appointments and all sorts of stuff. That is not persuading anyone towards a cause, is it? I mean, if someone were to say, this, let's say coffee, let's say suddenly someone was using the argument of coffee, which I drink every day, and someone were to say, right, here's the real effect of what this does, and here's what happens, and educate me on it. That might then make me think, well, actually, maybe I should change my ways. But stopping me on my way to somewhere or something like that is really not going to persuade me. So I've always felt that quite hypocritical, because I just thought, well, they would complain if they were disrupted from something, and yet they think that that's going to persuade other people. So I'm with you on that. As you said, it's a nice way of putting it. I've never phrased it like that before. A professional arguer, but that's true, isn't it? That's what we do. We persuade somebody, and I always say that when you go to court, you should be equally convinced by both sides, whether it's a prosecution in a criminal case or it's a civil case. You should be absolutely convinced by either the prosecutor's case or the claimant's case, and then think, actually, right, they have a real case here. But then when you hear the defense in either case, then you should think, actually, no, that's a really good defense. And then you're left in the balance, and then you should have to decide. But there's nothing here that leaves you like that. It is just an irritation. And that's the feeling that I get from anybody that is not directly involved with them. And so that's my interpretation on that, which fits with what you've just said.
Yeah, because I mean, a counter argument they often put is when people say, well, this has just put me off. They say, well, if you were put off, you weren't on board anyway. But they're missing the point that you get change through social pressure. There's this idea, once you get 3.5% of people actively on your side, then you win, because that 3.5% of people who are actively promoting a cause represents a majority of people who are passively doing so. But like I say, our job is to persuade people. And if we went into court and just yelled at a jury and said, you're a bunch of idiots if you don't agree with us, and that would not get them
or
on
no one's
board.
Going home until you agree with this. Yeah, you're all stuck here forever until you agree. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the thing. I mean, we have this saying that there's two classes of people in the world or in the country. There's those the law protects but does not bind, and those the law that binds but does not protect. And these people are all from the class of people who are used to being protected by the law and having all the benefits of the law, but with none of the downside. And, the flip side of this was all the stuff that came in firming up anti-protest stuff, all the changes that came in. This was on the back of Just Stop Oil. But these are all sort of white, upper class, sort of, nice demographics going around and like making cups of tea for the police. For lots of other people with lots of equally worthy causes, they do not have that luxury. They don't get sat, when they're all sort of sat there going, ha ha, we've won again because we're out on the streets and we got bail and all that sort of thing. Yeah, somebody campaigning against like sort of racism or, sort of like problems with the police. You don't see them getting the front pages in the headlines. You don't see them doing all the cute photo opportunities. And I think that's the thing. They are ruining it for everybody else. And they can get away with it. And this is why at first when they were going to prison, they were so shocked by it. It's like, how dare you penalise us? But, the flip side is they want the protection. If somebody bumps into them in a car, it's all like, oh, how dare you do that? That's outrageous. I mean, in the US, there've been proposed legislation to give immunity, both civil and criminal, to people who actually, injure somebody trying to get past a protest. And I think a law like that would be very popular here with, this, because, it's who? Why are they targeting this painting? What did Van Gogh? I did say it's funny. It's one of my Dutch friends' birthday today. Hello, Yeri. I should have actually got her to just record how to say it properly. It's also the access to art. I mean, museums and galleries are high trust environments because when you want to appreciate art, there are some paintings. I'm a big Rothko fan. You need to go. You need to stick your nose and stare at it for hours to see what's going on. And when you put stuff behind glass, you lose so much of the experience, because of the refraction and things like that. But they're having to do that. And they're having to rope off things. It's like you can't get anywhere near the Mona Lisa now, which fair enough, it's a terrible painting. No, so only kidding, art friends. I appreciate its importance in the history of art. But, you can't get anywhere near it. Whereas at the moment, you can get to sort of art and you can stand there and you can appreciate it. But we're going to get to the stage where the security is going to be so high, you just can't appreciate the art anymore. And saying
it was interesting, the sentence of remarks here, because a lot of people I saw in comments saying, wasn't it just the frame? Wasn't it just on glass? Did it not really cause any damage and things like this? Well, first of all, it's not whether or not it actually caused any damage. That wasn't really the point. But also, as the judge noted here, the picture frame itself was correctly described by the prosecution at trial as a work of art in itself, and it was permanently damaged by what was criminal action. I mean, as soon as they did it, I got my words in quick because before it actually became live criminal case, there's only so much you can say, but I got my word in quick there on social media and said, this is criminal. This is outright criminal damage. There's no doubt there. And it was. Tomato soup, it said slightly acidic, that it has a corrosive effect on the wood of the frame in particular, etc. So, quite rightly, that even the frame itself was a work of art. And as you say, it's high trust environment. So you go in, you are trusted to go and stand next to these priceless pieces to take them in. It's no good just to take a glance from a distance, is it?
I'm just going to do a little aside. I am planning, because I've actually started to sneak some art law onto my ostensible art law channel. And one I want to do is called The Legacy of Mark Rothko. And that's all about how his children were ripped off, how he died. After he died by all his friends, they just completely left these children all on their own. And the daughter, the eldest daughter, was only 15 at the time, took on all these major galleries and major art and actually won. But they were really nice at the Tate because I wanted to sort of get next to a Rothko to do the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, the legacy of Mark Rothko. Pan round to the painting, and they'd let me go in the room. They let me go right up to it. And there's a little bit of wire around it just to stop you going. I nearly tripped over it and fell through the thing. Now, if I'd have done it, I would have. I was falling backwards. I should have gone, just stop oil. But that's the whole point. People into art want you to enjoy the experience of art. And that's going to become harder and harder because of all these sorts of things. Now, again, with the frame, Van Gogh was very... I'm going to do some art law. Van Gogh was very anti the romanticism of the Renaissance period. So what I like is they chose a frame that they thought he might have actually liked. I mean, Van Gogh couldn't really afford to frame any of his materials. He was completely supported by his brother. I mean, people always say, how many paintings did Van Gogh sell in his lifetime? I mean, technically he sold loads because he worked in a picture shop. But he actually only sold possibly 2. But he was just completely funded by his very supportive brother. But I like the fact that they went to the trouble of sourcing a frame that Van Gogh probably would have wanted if he could have afforded it. And I thought that was really sweet. And yeah, because we talk about patina or patina on frames, and soup is corrosive. It is acidic. Another thing is they used Heinz soup. If they had any sort of art aesthetic, they would have at least used Campbell's soup, and gone for the Warhol vibe. But I've got friends who work in art preservation and conservation. The tiniest molecule of the wrong substance can irrevocably damage a painting. It can be over a long time. It can take decades for this to have an effect. But, these are very old paintings. I want this painting to be around forever. It's funny, actually, in the Dune novels, the Frank Herbert Dune stories, sunflowers still exists 30,000 years into the future. The Bene Gesserit actually have it. So I like that idea. I mean, Van Gogh's a very important artist. I'm not a huge fan of his work, I have to say. I do like Starry Night on the Rhone. I think that's an amazing painting. But I am fascinated by the paintings themselves and how he created them and when he created them and how he created them and what was going on. The fact that he took little snippets of real life and combined them to make the painting. I mean, none of his paintings actually show technically a real view that you could reproduce. Although there are some. One guy did a brilliant one where there's a famous painting of some tree roots, and they actually tracked down the exact lane where the tree roots were. And that is amazing, because when you overlay the photograph onto the painting, that is almost like not photorealistic. I won't get into what's realism and what's naturalism, because we don't want to get too boring about art. But this is a passion of mine. But yeah, this damage going. Oh well, the glass protected it. It's only a bit of soup. Like I said, my conservator friends, they can get one spore of a fungus that can take out, an artwork. This stuff is really precious. And this is why, to come back to the actual subject we're talking about, the judge invokes something called Section 67, which takes into account you are sentenced not for what actually happened, but what might have happened, what the risk was. And that does tie back to criminal sentencing generally. In England and Wales, you are generally sentenced on the basis of culpability, not consequence. I mean, that's why... to quote Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, attempted murder, why is that a crime? You don't get a Nobel Prize for attempted chemistry. But the fact is, it's your voluntary actions that because they're the only thing you can control, and therefore the only thing it's right to penalise you for. So in the same way that we don't penalise people for unforeseeable consequences, even if they've done something wrong, but it sets off a huge chain of events and it creates a huge disaster. Like, for instance, you set fire to a harbour. That's a famous case. But the same way, the mere fact that, if I take a pot shot at somebody and I miss, they don't say, no harm, no foul, you can go home. They say, well, we'll sentence you on the basis of what could have happened. And that's what's happened here. So when people are saying, well, there wasn't even any damage, well, yeah, that was luck of the draw. Now, I know Just Stop Oil have claimed that they have spoken to art experts who've said, no, there is no risk to the paintings. I notice they've not named any of them, because it'd be very interesting to see who is saying this, because this very much goes against the consensus of professional opinion. So, yeah, I mean, this is an amazing painting. Like I say, I can understand, if it's the Rokeby Venus, you can see the connection. I can understand with pulling the Colston statue down because there was a direct connection. I mean, I have no problem. I've said on previous videos on necessity, I've got some cases coming up that I can't really talk about where we will be running necessity. But that's a defence against what I consider to be direct action. Somebody went in, this is all animal rights based, I think I can say that. And this was somebody, I would say, rescuing, doing something to the benefit of animals. And therefore, I don't think they broke the law. I'm not saying actually it's all right to break the law. I'm saying in that particular instance, because of the defence of necessity, I don't think these people have actually broken the law. But the people here have. And, see my previous video on the test for necessity. But what you have to do is you have to do something that directly prevents the greater harm. So if I smash a car window because there's a dog in there that's overheating, that is a direct thing. If I see somebody's left a dog overheating in the car and I set fire to a bunch of shops as a protest against people leaving dogs in cars, or I just throw some paint over the car, that is not addressing the problem directly, and that's why necessity fails. So all these people saying, oh, why the judge has got it wrong. No, the judge is sentenced according to the sentencing guidelines. So he's taken into account, the high value. He's taken into account the risk. He's taken into account these are offences committed on bail. I mean, people saying, how come certain celebrities got suspended sentences? Well, I agree, actually. As I've said on yet another video, I'm not just plugging my videos, I think Mr. Edwards got off lightly. I think he got away with it. And I think the sentences for those offences should be a lot higher because they represent real harm to real children. But I guarantee you, if Hugh Edwards had stood in the dock going, I'm glad I did it, and as soon as I'm out, I'm going to do it again, he would have been sentenced a lot higher. And this is the thing. There are two defendants here, and the judge very much differentiated between them because one, I think, had just been dragged into all this. And he said, I accept that you will not do this again. So therefore, you can have the 20 months. Whereas the main culprit committing offences while already on bail, loads of previous convictions, and saying, I'll do it again, she got the higher sentence. She also got an additional sentence because she was also up. Now, some people have said she was sentenced for the risk to national critical infrastructure, which is an offence. And people say, well, a painting isn't critical infrastructure. Yeah, that is correct. That was a separate offence, and that's to do with another protest. A slow walking protest. Now, you can sort of argue and say slow walking, how does that affect critical infrastructure? Well, roads are critical infrastructure. So if you block them for more than minor inconvenience, that's the offence there. So she got 3 months for that, which the judge actually made consecutive. And normally, because it was a separate offence on a separate occasion, the judge said, and you will serve that in addition to the 2 years you've got here. So she's actually got 27 months in total. Sometimes if you do a bunch of offences, but they all arise out of the same actions, then you will serve the sentences concurrently. In other words, all at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I've gone through, the judge's sentence well in accordance with the sentencing guidelines. If anything, I think he could have gone a fair bit higher because of the high value of the frame. I mean, this reminds me of the guy who stole the Gogh, Duke of Wellington, who ended up, getting his own section in the Theft Act because he brought it back. So he hadn't permanently deprived, so they couldn't do him for theft. But they did him for actually theft of the frame because they never recovered the frame. So I do like the parallels in art law here. That it's all about the frame. But like I say, that painting, and what I thought was interesting is how the gallery, the people in the gallery, the people who look after this stuff, they acted almost like somebody had been attacked. They rushed this painting off to intensive care to check it and to make sure it wasn't being harmed and get ready to fix it. These paintings mean a lot to people. Yes, and I know they're inanimate objects, but the whole point of culture is it's all people. It's part of who we are. It's part of being human. It's part of society. It's part of our heritage. I mean, this painting, yes, it was painted in Holland. It's not a Dutch painting though. It's a painting for the world. It's probably one of the world's most famous paintings. As the judge said, it is literally priceless. It could never go on the open market. Well, I'm sure it could.
And that's the point here, isn't it? I mean, you get something. It's not like it's a commercial product, which even then would be criminal damage. Let's say somebody was protesting against Apple. They walked in and smashed, 10 or 12 iPhones or iPads, and they're damaging the planet. Well, I'm not saying they are, but let's say that these people were saying they are, and smashed all this stuff up in protest. Well, at the end of the day, yes, it's criminal damage. Yes, but yes, there's a value to it. Each one of them is worth a certain amount. It'd be like, well, here's the value of the damage. Here's what you did. Here's why you did it. So then they'd take all that into account. But this is different. I think that's what a lot of people really need to get around, because these are priceless. It'd be a bit like I'm a massive fan of Chinese and Japanese history and culture, and so traditional Shinken and the priceless swords that were handcrafted a long time ago in Japan, absolutely exquisite pieces that can't leave Japan. And there's some in London, obviously under high guard, but for the same reason, they are priceless. They can't be reproduced. They can't be replaced.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because actually, yeah, I mean, you appreciate this and the heritage of the culture, and we could actually do about all the laws around swords and things, and the problem that has for collectors. But here's an interesting thing, actually. There's an irony here, because my favourite piece of art involves destroying art. My favourite artist is a guy called Ai Weiwei. He's a Chinese artist, and he did a thing where he got Tang Dynasty vase, very precious old vase, and he just dropped it. And that was the work of art. There are some photographs of him doing that, but I'm a big fan of conceptual art. You can tell. Like, I used to hang around in Hoxton. I moved there before it was trendy, though. I'd like to think I made it trendy. But I like conceptual art because, to me, it's the fundamental of art. That it's all about the concept. But he dropped this vase. New builds. I mean, I always thought a really good protest against, like, the Stonehenge tunnel. I didn't have a problem with the tunnel. I just think that the entrances need to be outside the ritual landscape. If I could have got a Neolithic beaker, an intact one, I know it'd be a total rip-off, but I think it would have been good just to drop that. And when people said, you can't do that, there's hardly any of them intact in the world, it's like, yeah, but we're going to trash all the ones that we could have recovered by putting this big tunnel through. Now, the thing is, I wouldn't have really done it. I would have had a reproduction done, then dropped the beaker, and then when everybody's up in arms, go, well, of course, I'm not really going to break it, because, I recognise how precious these things are.
But it's the symbolism, isn't it? It's and you could use the same argument here. Like, I saw something the other day. It said, why are we not making buildings like we used to? And, you look back at what we used to create with much less skill and everything else. So yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, humans haven't got any more skilled since in the last 40,000 years. We've just got better resources. I mean, when you look at medieval cathedrals, they are just stunning. The work that went into them. What I like is they took so long to build that sometimes one side of the cathedral has different buttressing to the other because they actually the technology changed, so they're asymmetrical. Having said that, I think there are some great modern buildings. I'm a big fan of brutalism. But one of my favourite building projects is the Barbican Centre, which I know is that's very Marmite. A lot of people hate it. I personally love it. I think it looks spectacular. But yeah, this is the whole thing. It's all about, and this is what we're talking about. It means something to people. People can get very passionate about, and I will say art. I have a very broad definition of art. To me, art is anything created, anything that's artificial, not natural, that provokes a reaction. And I've done that because some people say, well, it's anything humans create. But you know me, there's some good animal art there, created by animals out there. But anything that provokes a reaction. And I'm a big fan, like I say, of conceptual art, where there's nothing really to look at. It's just somebody does something. Somebody creates a concept and gets you thinking. But this is all part of it. And I think this is why people are so passionate about it. I mean, I don't think there's anybody really in the art, so few people in the art world. In fact, I can't think of anybody who supported this action. At best, they've got well, I appreciate what they're doing. They're just a bit misguided, but that's young people. Because people realise just the importance of this. And, the point is, it's there forever. Heritage it's not just for us. We are purely custodians and stewards of this stuff. We hold on to it for everybody in the world, including future generations. And I think it is so selfish to risk denying that just for your cause. I mean, like I say, I don't have any problem.
That's very well put.
I totally am on board with environmentalism, probably more so than they are, because, without getting all annoying vegan, but I don't think for a start you can't be a non-vegan environmentalist because that's part of it. It's like I'm an environmentalist, but I've got my collection of Formula One cars. But we all have to, of course, live in a society. But to get back to the point, the sentencing is exactly on point. Now, they made the big point, just a while ago, how's your deterrent sentencing working now? Because people went out and immediately did it the same again to yet more another Van Gogh. But, that's like saying, well, look at all the people after the riots protesting and having further riots about the people being arrested. Does that mean that the judges should not have done exemplary sentences? And I've seen people say the fact that the judge condemned this action means he couldn't properly sentence. And it's like, well, no, because, judges quite often condemn crime when they are sentencing people. And also, I think, had the judge, treated them any differently because he had sympathy with the cause, that'd be a massive precedent. Because what we're going to say, you're going to say that, well, here's a judge who holds particular views on gender who sentenced somebody for less. Here's a judge who has particular views on immigration and is therefore sentencing people to, not the usual sentence. I mean, we'd be up in arms about that. So this judge has sentenced exactly in accordance with the sentencing guidelines. He's made judicial comment that is exactly on board. Nobody's sort of saying that judge, shouldn't have piled in on poor old Hugh Edwards. He should have just sentenced him and not commented on what he thought about the offences. Well, that's just ridiculous. Of course, judges. I mean, and this is just judicial comment. Judges are very wary not to give their personal opinions. But, they sentence on behalf of society. This was a criminal prosecution. So this was the state versus them. Now, it'd be interesting to see if the gallery actually went after these people for civil liability proceedings. I mean, they probably won't, just because of the hassle and the publicity. And actually, these people probably are, the trust fund kids probably are worth going after because, they're not exactly, people of straw, not worth suing. But yeah, I mean, I think actually, as a national institution, I think the trustees of the gallery have a fiduciary duty to try to recover the remedial costs and the costs of, everything they've had to do consequentially on the back of this. I think they actually have a fiduciary duty to try and recover that cash. So I think they should bring civil proceedings. So there you go.
And just to say, I think you should do a lot more of this on your Art Law channel, because there, as you say, there are a lot of people that do take this to heart. And I think if anyone is, let's say if anyone's criticising either sentence, either against Mr. Edwards or against these here, to say that either are not long enough or severe enough, then it's not the judge that frustration should be directed at. I think it should be directed at the sentencing guidelines because, and no disrespect to those drafting the sentencing guidelines, they are done with a lot of thought and process in mind. But if there's any criticism, it should be directed there because, as you said, Al, that in all of these cases, however much a disparity there seems to be between them, the judge is, when you analyse it, the judge is following the sentencing guidelines. But I think, with regard to art, I think you should do a lot more on your Art Law channel here, which, by the way, everybody is linked in the description below.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a real no drama llama because my argument is, I am just trying to demystify the law and just comment on the law. So I try to keep my opinions out of it. I mean, I think regular viewers know where I stand on certain issues. But, my opinion is worth no more than anybody else's opinion. What I can hopefully do is bring a bit of added value is commenting on the law because, I do have some small measure of experience of that. But that's why I do like coming on your channel, though, because I think this secrets format, I mean, this is, I've always tried to do the channel as if we were just sat down the pub, just randomly chatting about the law, which is my justification for when I get everything wrong or forget things. Because there's people who they are genuinely all one take, unrehearsed those. And I think people have spotted that. But in this era of everything by AI scripting and overproduction, I like to be authentic. But like I said, that's why on the regular channel, I tend to just go, look, here's the law. Here's what some people argue about it. Here's what other people argue about it. Decide for yourself. But this is a topic I am very, very passionate about because, like I say, primarily because they are ruining it for genuine environmentalists by alienating people. and also just because of the attack on the cultural heritage, which, as I keep coming back to, that is actually technically a war crime when done in certain circumstances. See my other video about the symbols that you can put up to protect art and cultural heritage. In war zones, you'd actually do that. You can actually there's a special symbol. You can just use the Red Cross, actually. That is a permissible use of the Red Cross or the Red Crescent or the Red Magnan David or the Red Crystal to protect, like museums and galleries. Is that one of these
by any chance? Is that one there?
Yeah, that's one of them. Fancy dress war crime. That's one of them. Yes, that's all about protected symbols. But there is actually a specific protected symbol that is designed that you can put on like important buildings, like interesting archaeological buildings or buildings that contain art. You can put it on galleries, you can put it on museums, but you can put it on like individual sculptures and statues and things like that. So, the word, even in the hideously,
I'll have to find it.
Yeah. But even in the hideously sort of like, international law pertaining to this sort of thing, which, people are often surprised as to just what the Hague Conventions and the Geneva Conventions, because there are 4 of them, what they actually allow. But even there, people recognise that going after artworks is fundamentally inhuman, because that's the whole point of war crime stuff. It gives you a lot of leeway, but it's just don't cross the line into being inhuman, and they recognise that. Deliberately targeting cultural heritage and artworks is inhuman.
Well, there you are. So I hope this has served to give a broader understanding of where all this comes from, why this... the sentences are more than justified. If anything, not enough, but as we've said, in line with the sentencing guidelines, but also to anyone that may, and I mean this with no criticism, but to anyone that might have thought, well, this is just a painting or whatever, why this is held so dear by so many. So I hope that's been useful. Do check out Al's channel, Art of Law, linked in the description below. Any final thoughts, Al?
No, I think I've done my rant enough. But yeah, please pop over to Art of Law. I'm very reactive on there, so I'm very grateful when people comment and suggest ideas, either asking questions or saying, "Hey, I'll do a video about this." And I also just love making the videos, and I like getting out and about and shooting them for you. The weather's changing a little bit now, so I'm having to go around and work on places where, it's like it's torrential rain. Where can I film? And, but if you want to see people like step off the edge of cliffs, that's really sad, you see. You can tell them.
With no encouragement from me, by the way.
Yeah, well, I nearly got you off the edge of a cliff, didn't I? But when we were like trying to get that drone, when your drone froze just on like 10 feet in the air, just hovering over the edge of the cliff.
It was just really out of reach, and I was like, "Do I risk life to retrieve the drone?" I think it did come back in the end.
Yeah, but just think, the one thing I think is just how helpful we would be to the coroner, because it's like, we actually filmed it all for you. So when it comes to the evidence, just watch the video.
Fantastic. Well, there it is. Go pop over and subscribe. Fantastic. I'm really pleased how it's growing. Do go over and subscribe there as well. So there it is. Thoughts and comments in the box below, please. I hope you enjoy this segment. We aim to do a lot more of them, so please do subscribe here too. And as always, from both of us, thank you so much for watching. Ciao for now.
Thank you.